What if we actually understood the social functions of what moves strangers into friends? Wouldn't it be cool to know how to get the attention of famous people to like us, be it our celebrity crush, the president of the US, a Nobel laureate who just so happened in this case to be my professor. That's why he didn't have a copyright under his image. A potential employer. And even in this room, what is it that actually allows us to take most advantage of this networking opportunity to a point where the people we meet here will not just be another acquaintance at best, but will actually be ingrained into a larger part of our network? Any ideas? The answer is actually in Beyonce's notorious song, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, and the differing perceptions people have of it. I'll talk about why in the latter part of my talk, because I first want to dispel why understanding respect and respectability is important. When I was in high school, I did an independent research paper on the poverty cycle at a time when I was working for a nonprofit that oversaw food pantries and homeless shelter in the area. I did this primarily because I wanted to understand more about generational poverty, but even more so to relieve my growing angst in seeing how so many young people were being deprived because of their current circumstances. They were being forced to succumb and understand that they're limited. So my employers recommended that I look into Ruby K. Payne and her works on poverty, because the way that she defined poverty was on the basis of these definitions. It wasn't only on financial resources or income, the traditional conception of how Americans view poverty. And I actually thought this was a richer definition of what poverty stood for, but in order to make my point valid, I ran a correlation study to see whether or not income would actually correlate to these 9 resources, and it didn't. One of the greatest things I've learned from this study is that an individual is barred and limited based on the access that they have to be able to succeed. In other words, access matters. So for any policymaker or social scientist, the question then becomes, how do people gain access? And as somebody who has a family that's currently undergoing poverty, I ask myself this very question. How did I even get the opportunity to speak in front of all of you here on the stage? How did I believe that I was actually capable of doing anything that I did? And it was because of these people. It was the culture surrounding a particular pursuit. It was the people who had access that actually gave me access because they thought I was worthy of it. They respected my talents and abilities. They saw me much more than who I was for my age, as somebody who's potentially seen as young, inexperienced, impoverished, in need. They looked way past that. And surprisingly, if you ask any UC Berkeley philosophy professor why they went into their specialty or their particular field, they would actually tell you that it was because of a particular mentor or professor that they had who treated them in that same respect. They wanted to focus because the people that supported them were rooting on them. So perhaps a bigger question of this talk is, how do you gain respect? Because that doesn't really answer the initial question that we had about access. And to tell you this, or to even briefly answer it, I want to tell you a little anecdote. When I was a toddler, I had a very unique perception of people. I viewed them on the basis of how attractive they looked to me. So meaning, I would cry upon seeing this person. I would actually run away to the other corner of the room, and this was one of our relatives. I hope I significantly changed over the years, or at least this photo serves as proof that I did. But the reason why I'm telling you this is because when I was a toddler, nothing would have convinced me otherwise to be able to respect an individual based on anything else than what I initially perceived them as. I favored certain types of people because I thought they were more attractive. And that's not to say that we actually change our perception of people either when we grow up. I'll give you an example. Your respect or your perception of respect of this man changes dramatically if I tell you that he is actually a graduate of both Yale and UC Berkeley Law School and now works in Morrison Foerster. You wouldn't think that he was that capable of being that individual unless I told you. But notice how your initial perception of this person dramatically changes from the initial perception that you had. Perhaps that's another point to make when you consider yourself in this quote, put yourself in other people's shoes. As somebody who works in social ethics, one of the things that we've learned, or not even learn, but observe within people is if you even tell an individual to see themselves in another person's shoes that's undergoing suicide, homelessness, addiction, and any other examples, that's not currently what their position is. Their values or their competency of viewing that person actually doesn't really change because there's other things that might have arise in terms of, oh, if I was in a position of suicide, I wouldn't have done the same thing as the other person. And so your respect for that person still does not change your initial perception of the values that they have. Which leads to my other point. In this room, one of the bane of any TEDx organizer is figuring out how you can get a diverse group of individuals to talk to each other like they were actually valued as much as themselves. It's surprising, but you can ask any person in this room in terms of when they view an individual and how you interact with them. It's not an automatic dynamic interchange. In fact, I had to work really hard to even get a photo like this up and to allow our event to look somewhat similar to it. So we've been talking about respect for a while, and we haven't even defined it yet. Merriam-Webster defines respect on the basis of these 3 definitions. And if you look closely to the slides, if you can actually see them, the first definition is dramatically different than the 3rd definition. And what do I mean by this? Well, my respect for my secret crush is on the basis of definition 1 versus my respect for that homeless person's dignity is on the basis of definition 3. So respect varies. And now, insofar as we have a different measure of respect, there are also differing levels of respect, the way that we view ourselves in comparison to others. So how respect is structured is actually on a professional all the way down to a personal level. You have your professional function or professional image and how much respect you get out of that. You have the personal or the trust comfort level in terms of how respect your friends exuberate upon you, and then you have your personal level in terms of how much respect you have for yourself. And one of the things that I've come to realize upon attending more than 200 networking events is that you see the same dynamics of individuals craving or going to a certain parts, meeting a certain type of people, going to a certain room, meeting different types, if not a selected group of people on the basis of this. We all have our own egos. Everyone craves respect. Everyone craves respect on all three levels. And it's not to say that respect is flawed in any way. In fact, feeling significant is what drives success. But knowing this and knowing that everybody in this room has the same measure or has the same craving towards wanting to feel significant, wanting to feel valued for your personal talents, your individual stories, and who you are as an individual, that's problematic if no one can actually fulfill that because everyone feels the same way. So how do you actually come to respect a person? It all goes back to your values. You can't respect something that you don't see as valuable. And the reason why is because value and respect are interchangeable. Value is defined as something that you consider important. And I don't know about you, but it would be really hard for me to value or respect something that I don't consider to be important. And lastly, the enigma that's surrounding the competency that we see in ourselves, or how competent and how talented we are as individuals. It's in many times based on the amount of or level of respect that we gain from the other two levels. We can only see ourselves based on the identity that other people have placed in us. So if you are limited by what society has defined and constrained you in, then that's how you're going to respect yourself. And this actually has to do a lot with research on low self-esteem and how that's related to poverty and how that's related to lots and lots of tragedies. It also has to do with the current issues surrounding the social stigmas around Black Lives Matter. And it also has to do with just how happy we perceive ourselves and how happy we can actually be, even when we're successful. So that leads up to my last point in terms of telling you or kind of expelling this myth or this taboo of respect. Oftentimes, people view respect in a very, very serious term. And it is, it's serious. It's actually key to understanding social function. But it's understanding how and why people respect certain things, understanding what they respect, and accommodating yourself to that level of what they respect, that you can actually gain access to them respecting you more as just on the basis of your human dignity.